Welcome, welcome. Welcome back to From Middle Class to Millions. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to call something out very quickly. I am sure you are feeling this as I am too. The world, particularly in the United States, feels very loud right now. It's like between the news and social media and whatever's going on in your life, it feels really, really loud. And it's a lot to process. And I know a lot of us are just trying to catch our breath and stay afloat. And so I don't want to bring heaviness to your life. I want this episode to allow you to have a little bit of a pause. And so, yes, I'm going to have a real conversation with you about money and mindset, and even something that surprised me in January. But I'm also going to bring in a little reality TV because I promised you that before. And I gotten away from that when I was talking about the webinar that I was trying to convince all of you to attend for free so that you can think about your money differently. But I want to give you a little bit of a reprieve. So it's not going to be heavily based on numbers. In fact, I don't even know if I I do mention a couple of numbers, but you're going to see that it's not a typical, this is where you should put your money, this is how much you should invest. It's going to be a little bit different because I think we need a break, and it's going to be an episode about reflection. So I just want you to hang tight. It's going to be easy. You can get cozy. It's not going to trigger you. At least I hope not. And I just want to give you a little bit of insight into what I discovered during the month of January and how amidst all of the madness and the craziness, or what seems like madness and craziness to me, I was able to take some time out to reflect. And I'd like you to do that for yourself as well. Okay, so first things first, this is just a quick reality TV tidbit that I think is really interesting. So I watched the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Potomac. Now, if you don't know me, I like The Real Housewives. I also like the Bravo universe, but I don't watch everything. I don't watch all of them. I mean, I do have a life. And so I can't watch everything, but I do watch The Real Housewives for the most part. The only one that I don't watch, well, actually, I don't watch Miami because when I got started, I think it was off the air and I just never jumped back in when it came back. And I don't watch, believe it or not, Salt Lake City, which I heard is crazy and I should start it, but I feel like now it's too late. I'm so far behind. But, on brand with limiting beliefs, it's not too late. So I can watch it. But I watched The Real Housewives of Potomac, the episode where Karen Huger got out of jail. And she sat down with Andy Cohen to have an interview. And first of all, bravo. Do all the housewives have to go to jail? Like, is that the deal? Like, you become a housewife and then you end up in jail in some way, shape, or form? It's crazy. And Potomac seems to be pulling them in left, right, and center. It just seems so bizarre to me. Anyway, so I watched the episode with Andy interviewing Karen, and I just found it really interesting that she talked a lot about going to Narcotics Anonymous and going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and she seemed really unable to say that she was an alcoholic. She really said that she could be in the Narcotics Anonymous space because, she was on prescription medication. And I think the reason why she could really lock into NA versus AA is that there's some level of acceptability around Narcotics Anonymous, right? That it is understandable that somebody could become addicted to prescription medication much more than somebody who became an alcoholic. Like, it seemed as though people who got addicted to prescriptions were, it wasn't their fault, like they started off with, whatever they got for an injury, whatever medications were prescribed to them, and then it was very much a slippery slope. Whereas with alcoholism, it seems like there's the shame around it that you just lack control. Even though we know it is a disease. Even though we know people are genetically predisposed to alcoholism, it's almost like she herself couldn't get her head around the fact that she was an alcoholic, and that wasn't as acceptable as is Narcotics Anonymous. I don't know, not a therapist. I'm going to talk to my therapist friends, because I do have friends who have clinical psychology degrees and psychiatry degrees. I'm going to ask them. But if you guys, I would love to know what you think about it, because if you watch the episode, I'm just really curious your thoughts of how Karen presented her current state, right? And it just seemed really interesting to me that she just could not lean towards alcoholism, even though she went to jail because she got another DUI. But she was leaning on the fact that, yes, it was the combination of the prescription medications and the alcohol. Could be true. Probably was true. No reason to believe that's not the case. But you seem to have an addiction to both things. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. All right. That's a little Real Housewives reality TV segment, but I don't want to take up too much time, because I could go into every one of those episodes, including Married to Medicine, and talk about these things forever. But I wanted to talk to you about how January has been, and has always been actually, a pretty reflective month for me. I think it started when I was younger, when I'd have these New Year's resolutions. And I say it like that because they were always whack. Because I would start with this New Year's resolution. And, like most folks, I don't even know if I'd last till February. I mean, God bless the people who do. I wouldn't even last until the end of the month. And that thing would peter out almost like I never said it. Like I never thought about it. Like I never, ever came up with a resolution. It was wild to me. So it was always a reflective month for me, because I what should I do now? Now that it's February, because obviously what I planned for January wouldn't work. And so I would look back, and I did this month as well. And I'd look at what worked and what didn't work. And to be honest, I'd been telling myself a lot of stories. And in the context of my business, I have become the queen of storytelling. And when I say storytelling, it's not the stories that I tell my clients or about my business or about my financial growth or anything like that. No, it's the stories that I tell myself about what I have done, what I'm capable of doing, and how I show up in my business. And to be honest, the stories haven't been great. And what this January showed me is that I hit a financial milestone in my business this past January. And what it told me is that the stories that I've been telling myself have been a crock of shit. Okay. And I have to say it that grotesquely, because they really have been a lot of nonsense. They truly have been. And I've been aiming at certain milestones in my business for years. And I realized that because of the stories I've been telling myself, it's exactly why I haven't hit those milestones. And that to me is very meaningful, because I never set out to run a business. Okay. I didn't go to business school. I didn't grow up dreaming of entrepreneurship. I didn't have entrepreneurs in my family. I didn't have a blueprint, right? So that wasn't my course. That wasn't the way that I had envisioned my working life and career to look like. So hitting this milestone in my business for me has been huge. Now, for many of you, you already know that I left a corporate job years ago. And I did so because it was hella stressful. It was a very, very stressful job, but I left it because I could, right? I know many of you are in stressful jobs as well. And I walked out the door because I could. I'd saved, I'd invested, and I had built enough stability financially that I could walk away. And so when I did, I learned something pretty quickly. I had a lot of people come to me, first of all, before I left, thought that I was nuts, but come to me and ask, how'd I do it? And they asked because even though, there's a lot of information out there, but there's tons of books and podcasts, you can go on social media, you can get all the tips. So it wasn't because of lack of information. They weren't asking me for more information and to point them in the right direction. They actually wanted to talk to a real person, like someone they could actually talk to who could help them make sense of money in the context of their real life, their actual life. And I think that's why the webinars are so successful, because it's not only that people are hearing about their money, they're hearing about some of the challenges that they are experiencing and getting the solutions to said challenges, but they're able to ask questions. They're able to talk to a live person. And I think that's what makes the difference. Because yes, you could continue to listen to podcasts about all the how-tos, but you're not getting that real life connection, that personalized one-on-one that is catered and tailored to your situation. And so I realized that when people want to talk to me, a real person, that I could help them. I had already figured out a lot of the things that they were looking for. Like I'd figured out budgeting, cash flow. I'd figured out savings. I'd figured out how to get a robust emergency fund and what consists of an emergency fund, and not just standard 3 months, 6 months, but why and how much. And I'd figured out investing. I'd figured out all of the things that, keep people spiraling for a long time. And I could take someone from all of that confusion about all of these things and all of their insecurities, and I could walk them through a process that allowed them to feel at ease, spacious. They would get clarity, and they loved it, and I loved it. I loved watching them. I loved seeing their shoulders relax. I loved seeing the light in their eyes. I loved the fact that, they hit milestones too. So it was really, really rewarding for me. But when I started the business and I thought about all of those things that I could potentially do, and even though I didn't know any entrepreneurs personally, I had a lot of limiting beliefs, right? Because I told myself that everything I had done and I was successful at before wasn't really that special. Like it was all really formulaic. You go to undergraduate school, you go to university, you get your undergraduate degree, then you go to grad school, then you start to interview, you start your career, you start to climb the corporate ladder, you start to get promoted, you get new jobs. It all felt really prescribed. Like I didn't create anything. I was just following the instructions that have already been laid out for tons of people. So I discounted that was anything special or unique. But everything that I did outside of my career, to me, was very different because I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have any instructions. I had to figure all of that stuff out on my own. And that included things like how to manage my cash flow, how to invest, how to buy real estate, how to run a vending machine business, how to build wealth, brick by brick. None of that was handed to me. None of that was laid out for me. I didn't know anybody who was doing it. And even though when I went into entrepreneurship, which from where I came from and everyone around me believed was super risky, that was the mindset that I was walking into starting this business with. Even though, in retrospect, when I think about it, like, how am I going to say that entrepreneurship is super risky and actually think that where there were people around me who were working their W-2 9-to-5 jobs who were getting laid off left, right, and center, and that was their only source of income, right? How could I sit there and think that entrepreneurship was far riskier? But I digress. Anyway, so that was one of the huge limiting beliefs that I had, that everything I had done wasn't really very special. It was all very formulaic. I didn't create anything. It wasn't unique. And only the things outside of that path were things that I had curated. The second limiting belief that I had was people already know this stuff. I don't know why I thought that. I didn't know this stuff. I was educated. I grew up middle class. I was making good money, but I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know when I started, like, on my journey, my financial journey, I didn't know anything about budgeting. I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system with money. I didn't know how to shed some of the beliefs that I was carrying with me from childhood that were impacting the amount of money I made, the amount of money I kept, the amount of money I saved, the amount of money I invested. I didn't know how to invest with confidence. I didn't know how to invest. I surely didn't know how to plan for retirement because everybody else that I knew was going to work until retirement and get a pension. But those days were done. Those days were done. You weren't going to necessarily get a pension. And even if you did, it wasn't going to be enough money necessarily. So why did I believe that people already knew this? Also, nobody was talking to anybody like me anyway. I know that people who are high earners or six-figure earners are treated in a way that is very dismissive because the belief is, what is your problem? You're making good money. So why would anybody have to speak to the woman who's working a 9 to 5 and making good money? The response that people would get is like, okay, well, go to a financial advisor, which is wild to me because going to a financial advisor and not even knowing what to talk to this person about, what to ask, not having a concept of personal finance, and then jumping into the investment space obviously is very overwhelming and dangerous because you're putting all of your hard-earned money in the hands of somebody without understanding what that somebody is doing and why they're doing it, and not knowing if, this makes sense for your lifestyle and what you want to accomplish. Also, a lot of financial investors have a minimum of you have to have a minimum of like $250,000 invested just to walk in the door. So what about the folks like me who were starting off that didn't start off with 250, who hadn't figured out yet how to get to 250? So where were these people supposed to learn this? But in my mind, I was like, everybody already knows this, even though I didn't know it. Even though I was being dismissed because I was in the category of, hey, you make good money, so what's the problem? But the problem was that making money and knowing what to do with money are two entirely different things. So I was walking in with these two incredibly strong startup limiting beliefs. And honestly, luckily for me, I decided, let me pick up a few more of these bullshit beliefs and put them in my brain along the way just so that I could continue to slow down my process. Like, it was crazy to me how I would just keep going, but the beliefs were constantly pulling me back. The other belief that I had, and I've been carrying this for many, many years in my business, is that people don't think about their money in January. I'm laughing at it now because, like, that's the other thing. A lot of limiting beliefs are irrational. It doesn't mean that they are not strong and poignant and pervasive, but a lot of the times they're irrational. And this was another one. So I believe that people didn't think about their money in January. So every year I took my foot off the gas in December and in January. It's the holidays. People aren't ready. They need to ease back into the new year. They'll come back later. Like, what? And this January, that belief completely fell apart. It like literally blew up on my face. And that's because this was my most successful January ever. In fact, it was my most successful month in my business ever. People were showing up. They were clear. They were motivated. They were ready, and they came in flocks. Lots of them ready to go. And I want to be really clear here too about this in terms of how we're measuring the success. The money made in January wasn't the point. And I'm going to tell you why in various ways, because I really want you to hear this. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because I want you to understand. The amount of money that I make in a year, my investments pay me in a month. The amount of money I make in a year in my business, my investments pay me in a month. So again, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because I want you to understand the power of investment. A yearly business revenue and salary that I can pay myself, I can make in a month from my investments. So if I shut down my business tomorrow, my life wouldn't change financially, not even one iota. So these milestones of financial success in my business, they're not about the money. They're about the impact. Knowing that this past January was so successful for me just reflected that I was helping more and more and more women. Whether they were 30, whether they were 60, they were coming to me because they were ready. They wanted to finally feel that spaciousness. They wanted to finally know that they wouldn't have to change their lifestyle. They wanted to know that they were going to be okay and that they were going to make that money work harder for them and that the money would last well beyond today or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. This January showed me that. This January showed me that what I had believed about Januaries was hocus pocus. All of it was nonsense. And I love that. I loved that my own limiting belief blew up in my own face. And that because I didn't hide from my business, take my foot off the gas from my business, I was able to create more impact with more women in said business. I mean, it's amazing. It is amazing. And the other thing that happened, because I did say we were going to talk about numbers, right? And I haven't given you any numbers yet, but here's the number that, well, I did give you the age of the 30 and 60-year-olds, if that's the numbers you're thinking about. But the real numbers that I'm talking about is I had a client come back to me, and she told me that she crossed the mark. She told me that she now had over $1 million net worth. Another millionaire was created. And that's the number that I want to put forth. I want to show you, and I want to say that I had another woman, number 11, don't share any names, that is now a millionaire. And that mattered to me so much. Because it wasn't about, oh, I hit this dollar amount in my business. No, it was because every single time I remove a limiting belief from myself, I help somebody else in their world, in their life. I help create another millionaire. And whatever she tends or wants to do with that money, however she wants to live with her life, she has the options in front of her to do whatever it is she wants to do. That's success to me. It was the proof that by challenging my own limiting beliefs, by not taking my foot off the gas in December, by not holding back in January, by putting myself out there and the message and showing up for people and them feeling like they can show up for themselves, that belief changed yet another woman's life. So the thing is, January didn't change at all, right? Like, I could sit here and be like, oh, this January was different, and oh, we may not be in a recession, and oh, the economy isn't bad. The economy's shit. It's been shit. I've heard we've been in a recession now for almost 6 years. We haven't hit a recession yet, by the way. And people are talking about the price of eggs, and there's so many distractions out there. And I'm not saying that inflation isn't going up. It goes up. It's happening. It's real. It's true. But January didn't change any of that stuff. The only thing that changed this January was my belief. That's it. That's all. And the joke is that when you believe something long enough, it becomes true, whether or not it actually is. So because I'd been telling myself nonsense about January for so long, it became true to me until I didn't tell myself that thing. And then guess what? It wasn't true. I used to believe that people didn't think about their money in January. And even though when I was in the thick of things, of learning and growing and figuring things out about money, I thought about money all the time. I thought about it in January. I thought about it in July. I thought about it in March. I thought about it in November. Like, what the heck was I talking about? I thought about it all the time. There were no months off. So the idea was just a story that I was telling myself. And I had assumed that I knew what all of these people were thinking. And I was wrong. So this is what I know. Apart from the fact that I'm at millionaire number 11, yay! I pat myself on the back, but more importantly, I pat her on the back. She's a superstar. I am going to create more millionaires, many more, and multimillionaires. Because look, for those who are at over 1, it's only up from here. But I'm going to do it because I'm no longer limiting my reach with all the stories that I've been telling myself. And I have to challenge myself all the time. Because a lot of those stories are embedded in fear, right? And because my fear will prevent other people from being liberated. Like, how selfish is that? So I've got to challenge my fear. I've got to encourage people to be ready to move from middle class to millions. I got to encourage them to do it at their pace in their real life. I think it's so important for me to challenge my own fears. I've had fears for so long. And they're creating these beliefs that don't even make any sense, that are hindering my growth and the growth of the women that are in my audience, the growth of the women that listen to this podcast and read my emails and show up to my webinars and follow me on social media. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? It doesn't make sense. I showed up for those women in December and in January. I challenged my nonsense. And when I showed up for them, they were there. They showed up for me. So yeah, I'm going to create more millionaires this year. Because the people are showing up. They're ready. And I'm ready for them. I really am. As timid as I may be at times, I'm going to show up for them. Because I'm ready. All right. So that was a lot. And it was a lot for me to process. But I did want to share it with all of you. And if any of this resonated with you, if you are someone who's been on the fence, you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, but you haven't taken that step, I want you to know that this is the time. Okay? This is the time. You're not too late. It's not too far. You're not too far gone. You're not in the wrong month. You don't decide that February is not the time to look at your money. No, there's no wrong time to start taking care of your financial life. The only wrong time is the time that you spend waiting. So join me. Let's get you on this journey. Let's move you from middle class to millionaire. It's possible, and it can happen right now. I'm going to put the link to schedule a call with me in the show notes. I want you to click it. I want you to get on the call. I want you to take a deep breath. It's not as scary as you may think, but in a few short months, we can totally change your entire life. I promise you, it's going to be worth it. All right. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being here. And I will talk to all of you very, very soon.